Okay, good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the local review body. Can I first ask members to appoint a chair for the meeting? Thank you.
Who's all online, Claire?
So currently there's yourself, Councillor Drybrough and Councillor Tate. So we are correct.
Archie, do you fancy doing it?
Yeah, I'll do it. To get the
Proposed Councillor Drybrough.
okay. If that's all right, Claire, I'll chair the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this local review body of Tuesday, 30th of November, 2021 at 10:30. I'm presuming that this is live fed. I don't have that in any of the...
Yes, Chair, it's certainly been live streamed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So therefore, I would remind members that if they wish to speak, to put their hands up in the system or speak in the chat function. And if your question's already been asked, to withdraw that and things like that. Can I ask you to go through the process, please, Claire?
All right, well, first I can confirm the Sediment Chair.
Yeah,
we've got 4 members currently present on Teams. Currently, Councillor Dempster not present, but yourself, Councillor Ian Carruthers, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Tate all present on Teams.
Thank you very much. Members, can we now go to the process, Clerk, with the 2 items of having sensitive information? Can you go through that?
Right, the members first wish to confirm if they have any declarations of interest.
Yeah. Members, have you got any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Okay, Claire, just if you just carry on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can confirm we've got 4 notices of review for today. 2 of these items have sensitive information in them, which we'll cover when we get to those items, but should members wish to discuss the sensitive matters fully, it may be necessary to exclude the public to allow that to happen. The first item up today is item 4, refusal of planning permission for siting of 4 holiday pods, formation of access roads and parking areas, installation of shared septic tank and soakaway and associated works at Torres Farm, Cuckoobury, 201925 full. You have the notice of review, report and handling, observations of the appointed officer, comments of the applicant's agents on the observation of the appointed officer, the planning application form, and in that, that's the first sensitive information. I can confirm that members of the LRB have all received a copy of the information referred to on page 129. This could be considered exempt under paragraph 6 of part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. You've got the decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council. You've got the relevant extracts of the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2. You also have photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are the proposed development would represent an incongruous development on open agricultural land and would be clearly visible within a number of important vistas with unduly adverse impact on the regional scenic area, contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2 Policy NE2 Regional Scenic Areas. The proposal would be contrary to Policy OP1 Part C of the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 LDP2 as it would fail to respect, protect and or enhance the region's rich landscape, character and scenic qualities. Furthermore, it is considered the development would not be compatible with the character and amenity of the area and would conflict with the adjacent core path and increase the risk of tree felling at the adjacent area of ancient woodland and designated SSI. That the proposal would result in the loss of good quality agricultural soil falling within land capability for agriculture classification 3.2 soil, and no justification has been provided as to why the development must be located on this land and not on less good quality land. As such, the proposal is contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2 Policy NE 13 Agricultural Soil. Requested methods of determination as the applicant has requested that these be an assessment as a review documents as well as a site inspection. The grounds in the notice of review are in summary. The proposed development would not represent an incongruous development, and that strenuous efforts would be made to address issues that were raised in the previous application. The site would not be clearly visible, and proposals would not have a significant adverse impact on the landscape character. Proposals have been designed to minimise any impact on the landscape, and this includes siting in a position that is integrated in and screened by existing landscape features. The site would not be clearly visible from a number of vistas, and there would be no significant adverse impact on regional scenic area. The proposals have been designed to respect the landscape, and in particular its designations as regional scenic area, SSSI, and an ancient woodland. There are no objections to development from Nature Scott. The proposal would not fail to respect and protect the rich landscape character and scenic qualities. The development would be compatible with the core path, and there are no objections from the Council's access officer. There would be no risk of unauthorised tree felling within the ancient woodland or designated SSI, and the application should be determined on its own merits, and this should not include any proposals for tree felling. There would in reality be no actual loss of good quality agricultural land in relation to the proposed development. Even if the land was of good quality, it would be a minor and insignificant loss in terms of the total land holding. The proposed development would represent a minor, technical and acceptable departure in the context of LDP 2 Policy NE 13 Agricultural Soil. The land classification system is technically correct. Evidence has been submitted by farmers with considerable experience to verify that the application site is not good quality and that yields are poor. In view of the evidence supporting this, it is unreasonable to refuse the application on this basis, as there would be no loss of good quality agricultural land, and proposals would represent a minor, technical and a significant departure from LDP 2 Policy NE 13. You have the relevant development plan policies referenced in your pack, and the main issues for the LRB to consider are: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan policy and principle? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP 2 policies NE2 and OP1 Part C? Would the proposal represent an incongruous development on the open agricultural land at this location? Would it fail to respect, protect and or enhance the region's rich landscape character and scenic qualities? Would the proposal be compatible with the character and amenity of the area? Would it conflict with the adjacent core path and increase the risk of tree felling at the adjacent area of ancient woodland and designated SSSI? The application site would result in the loss of good quality agricultural soil failing within the land capability for agricultural classification 3.2 soil, contrary to LDP 2 Policy NE 13. In light of the application submission, should this be taken as a minor departure from the development plan, are members satisfied that an adequate justification has been provided in this regard as to why the proposed development should not be located on less good quality land available on the same farm unit? It is considered that the proposal fails to accord with the terms of the development plan. Are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of LDP 2? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of of the development plan. The members are minded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal. What set of conditions or reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And the members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision. What changes to the specific reasons for the decision would be required? So, having outlined the documents within the members' papers, it now falls to the LRB to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed that no representations from any party will be heard today. The options available to the LRB for this and the following cases are that it can decide it has sufficient information to enable it to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations. The LRB would be required to state precisely what information it was seeking and who must provide it, resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who would be invited to speak on what matters, resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied, and this can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would obviously not allow a decision to be made today. If the local review body resolves it has sufficient information and no further procedure is required, then the local review body has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice would include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. If a planning advisor present at your meeting for this case, it's confirmed that they have not had any involvement in this case and were not the case officer or the appointed officer for the application. They are here purely to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning policy, law or process to the LRB. You have a solicitor present also here today that will act independently if the LRB requires specific advice on matters of law. So if members are clear and no further clarification is required, I'll ask the Chair now to lead debate and in the first instance lead the LRB through the papers and decide if you have sufficient information before you to make a determination today.
Jim, you want to come in first?
Thanks, Archie. Thank you, and my apologies to everybody for being a few minutes late. I had IT issues this morning that are now resolved. I didn't hear Claire's introduction, but I heard everything that was said about agenda item 4, so I'm able to participate in the determination of this appeal. And as far as I'm concerned, I have enough information to allow me to proceed today. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jim. First of all, I'm going to ask the question of Laura about the potential for this to be held in private, but I would imagine that that's down to members if they have any questions on that particular issue.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if members believe that there is sufficient reasons within our standing orders on exempt items to hold it in private, then the session should go into private.
Okay, thanks. Members, are we happy to do this in public, or have you got any concerns about this? Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I haven't got any concerns. A recent training event, I think we were all there, I think, from looking at who's around the table. Laura, you spoke about a potential just adjournment. I wondered if that was a suitable way to take forward if we do want to stop and discuss, rather than take a sec under local government 1973 section, I forget whatever it is, in regards to stopping. Maybe it's different because we're in committee, but referred to what the licensing board used to do or still actually does. I wonder if that's another option.
I think that would be down. I think that would be down to members, Ian. If we wanted to do that, we could ask, and certainly I could ask for a small break from session just to see what we can do. But Claire, do you want to come in on that?
Thank you, Chair. It's certainly not proposed by any means that this item would be taken as exempt to be held in public. It's only if you get into any great deal of discussion on that certain information that's considered sensitive by the applicant.
Okay, thanks very much. Jim, did you want to come back in?
Thanks, Chair. No, just to say that exactly what you've said and what Claire has said, I'd be happy to have this in public, and if we need to discuss a particular aspect, then you as Chair would be entitled to call a recess for a few minutes for clarification on specific issues and then resume in public again. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, members, for that information. I think what I'll do here, members, is I'll ask the officer to go through the photographs, and then we'll go through the index of context for any clarification that's required by the members, and then we'll go to the decision-making process after that. So, David, have you got the photographs and things like that?
Thank you, Chair. I can't actually see from if they're actually now being shared with you, but
They are.
They are. That's fine. Okay, I will move that to full screen then and just slide through those. Okay, so the first slide, this is basically, there's a little path that you can see that runs down to the lifeboat station. So this is taken from that path looking towards the public road. So it's looking east. And on the second slide, I think in your notes, and these are the same photos on page 189 to 193 of your agenda papers, it says east-northwest, which is new direction to me. I think it means east-northeast, looking from the track again across the site. This is a photo from the main public road, the U47S. So it's looking southwest towards the site. And then you've got, again, the track leading to Lifeboat Station. So this is now looking into the site directly on the right-hand side. And the next one just shows further up the track, looking back down again. And then you've got a view, so you can see Kukubri Bay in the distance there. So you're looking southwest in this one to the adjacent field. Number 7 here shows where the access track would go in. The overall site is 1.3 hectares, I'm sure you've noticed in the agenda papers. That includes all of the access track, which would basically run along where you've got the centre there with the hedge line. And that's a similar photo, just panning further across, again, Kukubri Bay in the distance. And the final one is basically showing where the access would go in from the main public road. So it would just be on your right-hand side there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, David. I have to say the sort of pictures in the report are pretty dark, actually, and that made it very, very much clearer. Members, I want to go. Is there any questions, first of all, on the pictures? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. I hadn't turned my mic off there and I realised it's in regards to that, I want to understand the close proximity to the core path. I wonder, David, if you could just, if the pictures can show us that, would you be able to show just clearly it's mentioned as part. There you go. Someone else.
Are you still able to see the slides on?
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, I think this is the core path that runs around here. So that's certainly my understanding of it. That's the path there. And this is the track, as I was saying, down to the lightpost house here. So you've got the 4 pods sitting within the site, and then the access comes from the main road, which is the U47 across here.
Do we have any pictures? Thanks, Chair. Do you have any pictures showing the core path at all or not?
I'm not sure it's actually in the ones we've been provided with, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I'll come back to that later on. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. All right, members, if we go through the index of contents, first of all, we've got the notice of review and related documents. Are there any questions or clarification required on that? Ian, is it a legacy hand or?
Just try to take it down, Chair. It is legacy, sorry.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that? Can't see any. We'll then go into the report on handling and related correspondence, which is pages 31 to 58. Any points of clarification on this? Can't see that. And then we've got the observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, pages 59 to 66. Any clarification required on any of this? And then we have the comments of the applicant's agent, observation of the appointed officer, pages 67 to 70. Any clarification required on that? Yeah. Then we have the planning application form submitted on 9th of November, associated plans and supporting informations, pages 67 to 164. And the financial information referred to on page 129, which is considered exempt, but I would imagine that there's no, as has been said before, there's no request to have any clarification on that as yet. And then there's the decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Councils, pages 165 to 172. Any clarification required? And then there's relevant extracts from the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, pages 173 to 185. Any clarification? And then we just had the photos here from David. Members, it's over to you how you wish to take this forward. So is anybody wishing to considerations of this? Ian?
Thank you, Chair. No try to hog this at all. I just try to set the scene from my perspective when I've read through this particular review. I'm looking at recommendation 2. It's on page 45 of the report. Page 45 of our, it's in a number of places, but I'm looking at page 45 of the report handling. And it's part 2 of the refusal in particular, where it talks about good quality agricultural soil. If you don't mind, Chair, I wouldn't mind picking up just a few points. I'd rather do it this way than going through it individually as we went through as you did there. Soil sample, I thought would have been a simple solution to understand that one, if that's an option. So I'll come back to that. I'll put that out there as a question. Is that something we can ask for to get clarity on? We're also looking about the impact it's having as in reason 1 for refusal. It's saying it's in Congress development and open agricultural land, clearly visible with a number of important vistas within duly adverse effect on regional scenic area and so on and so forth. I think we've been asked for a site visit, so I mean, I would have no problems with a site visit, Chair. I just wonder what other members are thinking, but I think in order to take this one seriously, it would be the right thing to do. Ultimately, we're not at that stage yet, so there's 2 points here, the sample, and the other thing was really about one other small point was the core pass. So under the Land Reform 2003 Act, local authorities or planning authorities, I think it maybe was, were actually asked to put forward core pass, which ultimately guided general members of the public across the countryside in a structured way, and that's how we came to our core pass. But also under the Land Reform 2003 Act, we have the right to roam, so to speak, and we can walk anywhere. I just wondered if this was to get a permission, so to speak, would that have an effect on the Land Reform 2003 Act where people could walk straight across this land? So it would just say it was a moot point, so to speak, but I'd like to understand that because of it's been mentioned about the core path, the conflict that's there. The Land Reform 2003 Act gives us the right to roam. If a permission was to be granted in this particular case, would that then have an effect on the people's right to roam in this particular area? Is my point there, Chair. So 3 points. Should we have a soil sample? Should we have can we ask for a soil sample? It would be absolutely clear then in regards to whether it's agricultural soil over 3.2 or above has been referred to. Classification within the report, the site visit, and is there a conflict between the Land Reform 2003 Act, the right to roam, Chair, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think from that one, specifically what you're questioning about the site visit, I'll come to that when we come to the options of the local review body, if that's okay with you, whether we've got to decide with sufficient information to decide this application today. But I think the other two, I'll ask Laura's advice on this.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to the Land Reform Scotland Act, if I understand it, there's 2 points that Councillor Carruthers has made. This development would not affect the core path. The designation of the core path would remain until you went through a statutory process to remove that. What it would affect, though, would be the right to roam over the area of land where the pods are built, because that land would be land over which access rights are not exercisable under Section 6 of the Land Reform Scotland Act 2003. So it would have an impact on your general right to roam, but it would not have an impact on your ability to use the core path.
You happy with that, Ian?
That was my understanding, Chair. I just want that clarified. Thank you.
Okay then. There's no other members. So first of all, members, do we have sufficient information?
There is that, Chair. I've written to speak. If you prefer a hand, I'll stick a hand up.
It's just that I'm dealing with on one IT piece of equipment, Jim. So yeah, please.
Okay, I'll stick my hand up in future then, but I did right speak to you. No, it was about the very point that Councillor Carruthers raised. I wouldn't be comfortable with us getting a soil sample. I would want to see a professional assessment made by an independent organisation if soil sampling is what we do, and we'll only achieve that by a site visit. So in that respect, I don't think a site visit would resolve the soil issue. That would have to be an independent assessment provided to the case officer, I would argue or contend. And if he wants a site visit, I'm not going to argue. I don't think I need one, but whatever other members decide. But on the soil sampling issue, shouldn't be coming to us. It should go back to a case officer for a formal assessment.
Okay. Ian, you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. So sorry, I mustn't have made my, as I quite often don't, made myself clear. So the soil samples and referred to page 45 for ease of reference was its reason for refusal 2, and it says that it should be the local the land capability for agricultural LCA classification is 3.2, and that's good agricultural soil. All I'm saying is that, and under that, because that's a reason for refusal. And certainly wouldn't be the case officer, wouldn't be the council. This is obviously over. It would have to be somebody independent would undertake that soil sample, and that be clarified without doubt, is what I was saying, just in regards to that. And the site visit was only about recommendation for refusal 2.1. It talks about I've already outlined it, Chair, but just for your reference, Jim, it was the 2 different points that I obviously never made that clear enough the first time. Chair, thank you.
Yeah. Andy, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Archie. I would have quite liked a site visit, and it's nothing to do with the soil. It's the fact that the applicant and the agent are saying there's minimal impact on views, yet there's a lot of emphasis is put here, because if it's surrounded on 3 sides by wood, for example, and it's only the core path, and then to the front, if I'm reading the map correctly, the ground slopes upwards towards the road away from the site. So therefore you would have to, I think the implication is you have to stand on top of a double-decker bus to look down and see it. And I'd be much happier if I could actually see that. And if to get a better idea of whether it would be in fact a visual impact or not. And maybe not the right time to ask that, Archie, but as time comes, I think maybe that's where I need to go.
Jim, you want to come back in?
Just for clarification, and it's not an exchange that Ian Carruthers and I have, but I said quite clearly an independent assessment presented to a case officer would be the route to take if we have any concerns about the soil sample and the representation made in the letter to the case officer. That's all. I didn't say the case officer would take the sample. I was quite clear, an independent assessment made and presented to the case officer. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. David, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's really just to refer members about the comments of the agent about the policy NE13 on agricultural soil, which, sorry, I'm finding it hard to actually read which page it is, because it's actually, must be about page 140-ish, because it's got printed over the whole line. But he is stating that basically they have got statements from the owner and also an agricultural contractor giving up their personal view on this. So certainly the view was sought from the applicant and agent on this soil capability issue. They are pointing out in this one that this area of the site, the 1.3 hectares is from a field of 11 hectares, And really, and I would actually concur with this, that the land capability for land classification looks at a larger scale parcels of land and cannot differentiate down to an area like the application site. So it's not as simple as actually going in and doing a sample of the soil on that area. Has it been correctly applied in terms of the loss of this level of land out of the overall context? Because the used to be done in my time, the Macaulay Institute did the soil classifications, and it was looking on a very much larger scale than getting down to this level. So certainly from my experience, I concur with the comments of the agent in that about whether or not you'd need to get any further soil samples done in that area.
Okay, I think that's important information to share with us, David. Thanks very much for that. Members, I think we'll take this forward. Have we got any? I mean, I believe that we have sufficient information to determine this today, and I'm happy to move so. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that. It's Jim Dempster, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ian, you want to take anything forward on the site visit in Handy?
I wouldn't mind, Chair, if that's possible. It is for the reasons outlined previously. And I think at page 69, David, it's brought to our attention at that point as well. And I know I'm in that sector, I understand it. So it can be anything from poor quality soil to drainage to whatever it may be can affect how productive a piece of land is. But I think it's right. But you've got the local farm who's farmed it for years, probably tried all sorts, including putting extra fertiliser and such like at the time. Putting in good drainage is saying it. So, I mean, there's a degree that we actually could have that discussion on site as well. If that was the case, if we had a site visit, but I would move that we do have a site visit, Chair. In particular, as the points referred to, it's recommendation for refusal 1 within a report, page 44, I think it is. Lost it now, Chair, but I'll move that we do because it's for the reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Andy, I presume you're going to second it?
Just a second, if I can get one bit of information for David first, if I can. You see the contour lines on the map on page. It's that wee you can hardly see it. Is it page 85, David? If I can.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is it? You'll have a bigger map there, I would suggest, and we've got, or at least I hope you have, our access to one. Can you see what the difference in contour heights is? It's usually 10 metres, isn't it?
I'll put that back on the screen if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got, to try and zoom it in a bit so you've got greater clarity. You can see there's a 20 metre contour line runs around there and a 25 metre contour, so they're 5 metre separation.
Right, okay, I think that's roughly what I thought. So that means then there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 20 metres in height between the site and the road. Am I correct in that? I think I am. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
With that in mind, Archie, and there seems to be a difference in opinions between the case officer and the agent and the applicant. I think we need to satisfy ourselves that about the line of sight to these other scientific areas. And I would second Ian and say we should have a site visit.
Okay, Claire, we've got a proposal to decide today, and we've got a proposal for a site visit. I would imagine we'll have to go to a decision on this.
Yes, Chair. Okay, we've got a motion proposed by yourself, seconded by Councillor Dempster, that there's sufficient information to determine today. Amendment proposed by Councillor Carruthers, seconded by Councillor Ferguson, to have the further procedure of a site visit, taking into account the reason for refusal, recommendation 1, and basically the line of sight on the application site. So going to the vote then, Chair.
Proposal.
Councillor Carruthers.
Sorry, I missed that. I got locked out there. Apologies.
Right, the motion,
So
Councillor Crullers, the motion is proposed by the Chair, seconded by Councillor Dempster, sufficient information to determine today, amendment proposed by yourself, seconded by Councillor Ferguson, to have the further procedure of a site visit. So on the vote then, with yourself, Councillor Crullers.
Amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Tate.
Amendment.
Okay, amendment carries 3 votes to 2. That's to adjourn this item for a further procedure of a site visit.
Okay, members, just just before we go into the decision there, do you resolve to hold the site visit accompanied or unaccompanied?
There's a process, isn't there? There's certain officers have to be there, Archie. But are you talking about the applicant?
I think, Andy, I think this is when we talk about unaccompanied or accompanied, it's for those the applicant and any objectors and things like that.
Well, for my reasons for seconding, I wouldn't need the applicant there. I would just need to see the site personally. So, for me, I think unaccompanied.
Okay, thanks. Ian?
Comfortable with that, Chair.
Jim?
Yeah, me too, Chair. Although there might be a right for the agent to be there, and I'm no arguing about that. I'm just saying I agree that it should be members of the local review body and case officer or other members of council staff that should be there, and I'm content with that.
Okay, so we've resolved to hold a site visit, which holds this one in suspense. So we'll not have a decision today until the site visit is carried out. Claire?
Okay, just to clarify the terms of what's meant by accompanied and unaccompanied. Accompanied, you've already stated you like the officer there, so I would describe that as an accompanied site visit where you have you're not the case of the planning advisor present with you, so answer any questions you may have. Is that what you would like? Yeah,
just it would be unaccompanied by the applicant and the agent, but the advisory officer to be there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that is the first one. Can we move on to the second item, please, Claire? Item 5.
Okay. Item 5. Conditions attached to delegated grant of planning permission for erection of dwelling house and domestic garage at land adjacent to Fir Tree Cottage, Station Road, Newton Stewart. Conditions attached to the delegated grant.
Chair, you've got legal services hand up, maybe on the previous item before you move on.
That's me.
Laura, did you like to come on?
Thank you, Councillor Driver and Councillor Dempster. It was to pick up on Councillor Carruthers, in addition to originally proposing a site visit, had also mentioned a soil sample, and it was to check whether or not, in addition to a site visit, you would be looking to request further written submissions on the soil before you moved on.
I would prepare just to go for the site visit and not the soil sample. I think David actually covered that pretty well in the presentation. Is there any difference of opinion on that?
Chair, I would agree. So I was satisfied, Laura, with the fact that David had come back and mentioned that there's certainly enough material information within the report which could cover that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Okay, Claire, sorry about that.
Okay, item 5.
Note to self, keep an eye on the screen.
Conditions attached to delegated grant of planning permission for erection of dwelling house and domestic garage at land adjacent to Fir Tree Cottage, Station Road, Newton Stewart, conditions attached to delegated grant of planning permission. 20.89 full. You have the notice of review, report and handling, observations of appointed officer, comments of applicant's agent, planning application form, decision letter, relevant extracts of LDP2, photos of application site and locality. Planning permission was granted subject to conditions. The applicant's agent most recent submission provides that the applicant is content to comply with all of the conditions as they affect plot 3 and plots 1 and 2 are covered by previous permissions, but seeks to vary the planning permission which has been granted by seeking the deletion of condition 10. Condition 10 reads as follows: that the dwelling house hereby granted planning permission should not be occupied and until a 1.8 metre wide footway has been provided along the site frontage with the industrial estate road, and the said footway has been constructed in complete accordance with the said drawings or such other drawings as may be approved in writing for the purpose by the planning authority in consultation with the roads authority. Thereafter, this arrangement shall be retained as such for the lifetime of the development unless otherwise agreed in writing with the council as planning authority. Reason in the interest of road safety. Requested method of determination. The applicant has asked that the review be dealt with on the basis of an assessment of the review documents, in addition of further written submissions, one or more hearing sessions, and by means of an inspection of the land which is subject to the review. The applicant's agent has stated that they believe some conditions have been applied improperly. It's quite complex. Only by additional written submission and a site visit can everything be explained in detail. Grounds stated in notice of review. In summary, originally they were seeking the removal of conditions 2, 3, 6, 10 and 11 from this planning permission in the belief that these have been imposed incorrectly. However, as above, the applicant's agent most recent submission provides that the applicant is content to comply with all conditions as they affect plots 3 and plots 1 and 2 covered by previous permissions, but seek to vary the planning permission which has been granted by seeking the deletion of condition 10 on the following basis. Condition 10 is not acceptable to the applicant as it is still considered to be excessively onerous and unnecessary, as there is already a good footpath 1.2 metres wide which is perfectly adequate for the very small number of pedestrians who use it. And 2, also if it was to be increased by 0.6 of a metre in width, it would mean either reducing the width of the carriageway by 1.6 of a metre by removing the existing hedge, which has to be retained under condition 1. If the relevant development plan policies. And so the main issues for the local review body to consider are LDP policy OP1 Part E provides that the development proposals should minimise the need for travel by car and encourage active and more sustainable forms of transport, whilst avoiding or mitigating any adverse impact on the transport network or road safety. Does condition 10 meet the 6 tests of a planning condition as set out in the Planning Circular 4 1998? Specifically, is it necessarily relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects? With the variation of this planning permission sought by deleting condition 10 compromise standards of public safety in the locality to an unacceptable degree, or is the existing footpath sufficient to ensure public safety would not be unacceptably compromised? So having outlined the documents in your papers, again now falls to the LRB to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed that no representations from any party will be heard today. The same options and procedures available to you as outlined previously. And again, if the LRB resolves that it has sufficient information, no further procedures required, decision notice would include a statement of the terms and how that decision was reached. Again, you have a planning advisor present for this case. It's confirmed that they have not had any involvement in the case. They were not the case officer or the appointed officer for the application. They're here purely to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning policy, law or process of the LRB Again, you have the solicitor present who will act independently if the LRB require matters of advice or law. So if no further clarification is required, I'll again ask the Chair to lead you through the papers for this item.
Okay, members, before we go through the clarification stage and things like that, I'll ask David to go through the photographs, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see that now. Really, because this has come down to the one single issue of the hedge and whether or not it should be a 1.8 metre high footway, I'll scroll through them very quickly, but you can see in the centre there is just off centre is the hedge in question. A Google Street View image as well. Sorry, I should have just said at the start that these are the same photos you have on page 297 to 300 in your agenda papers. So a Google image showing the line of the hedge again. This one doesn't actually show anything to do with the hedge. And another Google image from the road to the industrial estate where you can see quite clearly what the width of the existing footway is. And another internal view looking up towards the road and the hedge. And another Google Street View image going towards the industrial estate where again you've got the footway width and the hedge itself. And a final one from within the site where you've again got the hedge.
Thanks, David. Members, any questions or clarity on the photographs? In which case we'll go to the index of contents. Are there any questions or clarification on the notice of review and related documents, pages 199 and 210? Is there any points of clarification on report of handling and related correspondence, pages 211 to 230? Is there any observations or points of clarification required on the observation of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, pages 231 to 236? See any? Comments of the applicant's agent and observation of the appointed officer, pages 237 to 240. Planning application form submitted on the 4th of December, associated plans and support information, pages 241 to 268. The decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated the 20th of May 2021, pages 269 to 282. The relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan, pages 283 to 294. And we've had photos of the application site. Members, will move into discussing this now. Anybody wish to say anything about this? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. I'd have to say I'm sympathetic to the applicant in this case. And if David could take us back, please, to the first two pictures of the footpath and the hedge. That one will do. You can see quite clearly in that image, Chair, of the footpath, the council have decided to reduce the width of the footpath by putting infrastructure on there, namely a salt bin. So I hardly think there's justification asking for additional width when we're deliberately reducing the width of the footway that's there. And I think also, if the hedge is maintained properly, 1.2 metres is reasonable given the circumstances presented by the applicant's agent.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. I would agree with you. Ian?
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if I'm just the same minded. I could be persuaded maybe otherwise, but I'm looking at that. To me, it looks 1.2. So we're looking at what? That's 4 feet compared to 6 feet in old money. in regards to getting up through there. I just wonder, as far as, I suppose this question's at David, as far as design standards for the Roads Authority, what would their view be in regards to this? I mean, I just look at that hedge, like it's got to grow, it's got to get bigger, it's got to be contentious. Fair enough. I mean, I'm kind of on the balance with this one, Chair. Just advice for David, if possible.
David, can you help out here?
Thank you, Chair. It's certainly the case that the standard minimum footway that is looked for a new footway going in is 1.8 metres. So you obviously have a situation at the moment where the existing footway is below what we would look for a new one. So there's a clear tautology here between what you've got in condition 1, which is requiring the hedge to be retained, and condition 10, which is basically saying that you've either got to grub up the hedge that you've just required to be retained, or you need to move further into the footway and move the footway further into the carriageway, which, given that you will have quite a lot of HGVs going into an industrial estate, that's something you may wish to consider, which is of more importance, is having proper width of the carriageway to allow proper access to the industrial estate, or losing that 0.6 metres width to ensure that you've got a footway of current standard.
You happy with that, Ian?
Yeah, it's good advice, Chair. Actually, kind of the fact that it's leading into an industrial estate, there will be large vehicles, HGVs in particular. I'm not sure what the traffic volume is going into there. Fair enough, we've got that information in front of us, but I've still got some concerns in regards to reducing that, but not having that footpath up to the proper 6 foot or 1.8 metres.
Right, okay. David, can I ask a question? Sometimes we put in planning applications recommendations and conditions that a programme of maintenance can be put in place, and that's reasonable and it can be checked. Would that be an opportunity here?
Chair, I guess on page 274, to a degree, condition 3 sort of covers that. Oh no, sorry, that's the new tree planting. Yeah, there isn't anything in condition 1 which actually has anything to do with it. It just says it shall be retained and maintained to the satisfaction of the council. So I suppose in the event that the council was concerned about the hedge not being maintained, then you could argue that there was a breach of condition 1 and we could require that hedge be tidied back for that reason. I also think under the Road Scotland Act 1984, there are powers to the Roads Authority to make sure that the carriageway is not being impeded.
Okay. So, members, just coming back, has anybody else got any questions before we go into the options for the LRB? Okay, members, do you think we have sufficient information to make a decision today?
Yes, for me, Chairman.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, for me, Archie. Yep.
Thanks, Andy. So, do we have a proposal or a motion or an amendment or anything on this? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. I will, given the representation and the observations on the images, I propose that we delete condition 10 and agree with the appeal submitted today on condition 10 only, and ensure that the condition 1 guarantees a required level of maintenance on the hedge at that particular location.
Okay, I'm happy to second that. Has anybody got any other alternatives?
I've not got my hand up. No, thank you. No, I've not got any alternatives. I mean, I think there is a potential dispensation down to 4 feet anyways through the Roads Authority. We would normally do that. My only concern is come back to what Jim's pointed out. You've got a salt bin there, you've got a sign in the middle of the pavement, and it's potential upkeep. We know how difficult it is. I think the project under the Roads Act, you go back 2 metres, potentially even beyond the 1.8 metres. It's the we know as councillors the conflict that creates in time to come. So, but no, happy to go with your proposal, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other things? Claire, are you happy with the decision of the LRB on this? David?
Chair, there's something which Laura actually might be able to comment on as well. I just note the comments of the appointed officer on page 236 that with the benefit of hindsight, conditions 4, 5 and 8 could have been better worded. If effectively you are actually veering the terms of the previous planning permission to grant permission but without condition 10, it struck me that there might be an opportunity to actually provide the clarification which the agent was seeking in those conditions as well, even though they only specifically applied for certain conditions 2, 3, 6, 10 and 11. It might be an opportunity just to give that clarity, which would assist.
Thank you. Jimmy, you want to add anything to that?
No, Chairman, I'm happy with the advice of the appointed officer, and if there's an opportunity for clarity for the applicant or his agent, then that's absolutely fine with me. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Andy?
I'm broadly in agreement. Just a bit of advice of either David or Laura is if we do what David's suggesting there at the end, and if the applicant is, or the appellant, whatever you want to call him, is unhappy with the new arrangements, is he still able to come back to LRB on those grounds, or is this the final hearing for it?
David?
Really, the basis for me making those comments is the comments of Mr. Brown, the agent, on page 239, where he is basically saying that after studying all of the new information, my client has reconsidered the situation and does agree to comply with all terms of the conditions as they affect, blah, blah, blah. So really, it's the clarification that they were seeking, which has been given by the appointed officer in his further comments. So my thinking on this was that it might just, because the wording of the conditions is accepted by the appointed officer as not being ideal, and they've withdrawn their concern about a number of issues on the basis of that's been clarified, it does strike me as an opportunity just to make things that little bit clearer. Again, I'm happy to take advice from Laura on that.
Okay, Laura, have you got anything to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking through the legislation to see whether or not it is possible for us to change something that has not been asked for. We used to get into trouble with that with planning obligations. We could only actually give them what they'd asked for. We couldn't do anything more. So if you could bear with me a moment, I'm looking back at the Town and Country Planning Act. If you could just bear with me a moment.
Okay.
If it helps, Laura, generally speaking, I would agree with you, because they have specified the conditions they're looking at. It was really to do with the fact that they've withdrawn effectively part of the notice of review on the strength of what's come forward from the appointed officer. So if it keeps things simpler, I totally retract that advice and just stick to varying the terms of the permission to actually delete condition 10 would certainly keep it simpler, but
I think you would be on safer ground there, David.
Okay. Jim, do you want to come back in, or is that a legacy hand?
No, I wanted to come back in. I've just got to say that might be the default position, that we offer the applicant or appellant the new set of conditions, and if they're not particularly happy, we just default to the decision I hope the LRB are about to make with deleting condition 10 and the reminder, if we don't need to change condition 1, that there is a duty of care responsibility for hedge or shrub maintenance built in within condition 1. So if Laura's advice is it may become a hot potato, then we'd either speak to the appellant or simply leave it as is. And as David Sutty already said, or the officer already said, the appellant has already accepted all the conditions with the exception of number 10 anyway.
Okay. Before I bring you in, I'll get Laura in again.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at section 43A of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997, subsection 15, and apologies for all these references, subsection 15, it says that the planning authority may uphold, reverse or vary a determination reviewed by them by virtue of subsection 8, and subsection 8 is when you have a matter referred to the local review body. I would say, because it says the planning authority may uphold, reverse or vary a determination reviewed by them, there is latitude there, more latitude than was granted to us with planning obligations, that if you felt in your variation of a determination that you wanted to alter conditions which hadn't been requested for alteration in light of the case officer's comments, then subsection 15 would allow you to do that.
I'm going to try and keep this clean. Just keep it the same as Jim is, but Ian and then Andy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I thought David's advice was good, and Laura's come back to it now. But I suppose the question I was going to ask, I wouldn't have thought under page 239 would have superseded the application for the review in this case. So therefore, the initial review, all the conditions are being referred to. The appointed officer has pointed that out to say, listen, these could have been tidied up. So I thought David's advice was actually quite good advice. Maybe we should consider it, and I think Laura's come back and said actually we can do that quite safely. So I'd be content to take on board what David said. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Andy.
That was exactly the point I was going to make, Archie. And again, it's the philosophy behind planning, isn't it? Are we here to help people do what they can do, not tell them what they can't do? And if there's an acceptance from all the parties here that what David's suggesting is the best way forward for this site and for this application, then I'd be happy to go along with that. Okay. Given the legal advice that we can vary.
Okay, Laura, you got your hand up again. Okay, I think it was just a legacy hand. David, if we move forward with this with the other conditions, obviously remove condition number 10 and make the changes you suggest to the other conditions. I'm happy to go along with the majority of the members here and say that if we can do that, that's the case. Have you got any suggestions on moving that forward?
Chair, certainly that was my understanding, what Laura's just read out, that the LRB has the power to vary. So really what I would suggest, if you're so minded, is to take the decision notice, delete condition 10 alone, so condition 11 will become 10 and so on, and just add in the wording that the appointed officer has actually set out for conditions 4, 5 and 8 on page 236, which just makes it that much clearer, so there's no ambiguity. And it's only on the strength that you can vary, you have the power to vary things, that I was suggesting that.
Okay, members, are we happy to go forward that way by deleting condition 10 and then doing the variations on the other conditions that David has mentioned there?
I'm content, Chair, especially if the default position is that the existing conditions remain, if there's any issue about that.
Okay. Claire, are you happy to give the LRB's response to this?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the local review body are agreeing to vary the decision of the appointed officer in granting planning permission, but deleting condition 10 from the original decision and varying the wording of, correct me if I'm wrong here, David, is it 4, 5 and 8 that are getting varied?
That's the ones that the appointed officer had stated on page 236,
to take account of the wording from the appointed officer on page 236 of the papers.
That's great. Members, we're happy with that. To move on to the next item. Thank you. Okay, Claire, we go to item 6, refusal of planning permission for erection of dwelling house and formation of access to site between number 25 and 21 Ballyall View, Dalbeatty. Planning reference number 210464, full.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Again, you've got your notice of review, report and handling, observation of the appointed officer, comments of the applicant's agent, planning application form, decision letter, relevant extracts from the LDP2, photos of the application site. The grounds of refusal are the proposed development is contrary to policy OP2 of Local Development Plan 2 and associated supplementary guidance, in that the siting and design of the proposed development represents overdevelopment of the site and fails to relate well to the character, layout, density and pattern of development in the surrounding area. Requested method of determination: the applicant has asked that the review be dealt on the basis of an assessment of the review documents and further written submissions, these being additional location plans submitted to try and demonstrate that the proposal is not out of character with the surrounding density of existing housing and therefore an appropriate level of development within the plot. The grounds stated in the notice of review: in summary, the proposals have been modelled into images 1 and 8 to demonstrate that this dwelling would sit comfortably within the existing streetscape and not look out of place or proportion to its surroundings. The design has been developed to have a low eaves to the road frontage with a shallow-hipped pitched roof to ensure that the visual impact is kept to a minimum from Balliol View. The existing front and rear building lines between numbers 21 and 25 have been maintained to ensure the proposal fits the existing constraints of the approved streetscape. Whilst the development is certainly not out of a higher than average density, neither is it of a low enough density to give a feel of large areas of open space between the existing houses that would make these proposals look and feel out of place or unusually squashed within adjacent properties, as it concords with the general principles already established as a pattern within the both immediate and extended developed area. It is clear from the satellite and OS images that there is a variation in plot and building sizes within the existing Balliol View and Maxwell Park development. These range from a very large 1.5 storey detached houses to single-storey terraced bungalows and almost everything in between. But as you can see that the images above and below, despite this broad range of property types and sizes, the streetscape remains consistently made up of a frontage that generally sits between 4 to 6 metres back from the footpath and between 1.2 to 2.7 off their side boundaries. The proposals submitted up for this plot fall within this pattern, having a frontage depth of 5.9 metres to the footpath and 1.9 to the side boundaries. Proposals do not look out of character when viewed directly from the street, seeing as the boundary distances broadly accord with the other existing adjacent dwellings. There are many instances of other plots within the development where the boundary distances are less than 1.8 metres to 1.9 metres proposed, but they are not considered to have crossed the threshold of acceptability. Can you clarify the policy where footprint to plot ratio of 30% is specified? Our development is now to be designed by numbers. The applicant has worked hard to reduce the footprint height and mass following their first submission and now fully believe that by keeping the roof to the standard 27.5 degrees, where others are 45 degrees, maintaining building and roof lines, the proposal meets all the conditions within the planning regulations. You have the relevant development plan policies. So the main issues for the local review body to consider: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan policy and principle? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP Policy 2 and associated LDP 2 supplementary guidance in relation to siting and design of the proposed development? In particular, does the proposed development represent overdevelopment of the site? Does the proposed development fail to relate well to character, layout, density and pattern of development of the surrounding area? If it's not considered that the proposal accords with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify departure from the terms of the development? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? The members are reminded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal. What set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? The members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision. What changes to specific reasoning for the decision would be required? So again, having outlined the documents within your papers, now falls to LRB to determine if you have sufficient information to consider the review. The LRB has the same options and procedures as outlined earlier, and if the LRB determines it has sufficient information and no further procedures required, then the LRB has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. Decision notice would include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. You have a planning advisor present for this item and the following item. It's confirmed they have not had any involvement in either case, or not the case officer or the appointed officer for either application. They hear purely to provide independent advice as needed, and again you have a solicitor present who will act independently for the LRB for any specific advice matters on law. So again, I'll ask the Chair to lead you through the papers for this item.
Okay, before I go to the photographs, Ian, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Claire, there was a least recent training session, and it was outlined to the members present, which I think we were all there, said earlier. I think as an LRB, because it focuses on the local review board in particular, we can decide, is my understanding, that actually we can put different weights, material weights or levels of materiality against. We can have a different view in regards to the previous decision that's been made. It's de novo here, I think, was the point that was made completely. So it's not about reversing the decision or looking back or going against policy. This local review body can actually consider this, actually, say for this case, use it as an example. I was going to actually bring it up in the previous case, but slipped my mind. So if it was this case, we could say actually it does actually comply with a local development plan. We don't have to. It's unlike the plan application committee, where I understand it's a different process.
Well, I'll ask the person, Ian, that delivered that training, David, if that's correct.
Yes, basically. Sorry, am I on the screen because I'm not appearing here?
You're not on the screen, but we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, that's fine. Yes, basically, you do have to consider first and foremost Section 25 of the Town and Country Planning Act. That's where the development plan takes priority, but you can look at other issues in different weight to matters. If it is something that's clearly going to be contrary to the development plan that you wish to approve, you've got to justify why that would be the case. But if you've got an unbalanced case where more weight has been given to one thing and another, and the LRB consider that the information before them is such that a different decision can be made, then that's where you've the powers to, as was just outlined by Claire, to approve, refuse or reverse. Vary.
Okay, thanks for that. You happy with that, Ian?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Jim, you want to come in?
Just to say, as Ian says, we all attended that, or most of us attended the LRB training. It was very enlightening. It was really helpful. It was a refresher. That was the intention. But I don't think I would want to be just ignoring LDP2 or any other local development plan as a member of LRB because we can. I'd expect that we'd respect the process, and a vary weight, as Ian suggests, is legitimate, provided it's within the context of the development plan itself. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. Right, members, we'll go to the photographs first. David, can you take us through?
Let's see, Lindsay Cameron is going to be dealing with these two items. So, Lindsay, are you able to provide the slides for these ones?
Yes, I can. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Just share the slides with you. Can everybody see those?
Yeah.
You can, okay. Okay, so these are the photographs that are included in pages 405 and 406 of your papers. And also the location plan on page 365 is useful in providing the context for these. The first photograph is taken from within the site, sort of looking in a generally northerly direction towards the side elevation of 25 Balliol View. You have the development access road just to the right-hand side of the slide. The second photograph is taken from the development road. It looks across the vacant plot to the left of the application site, with the application site in the middle of the photograph, and again 25 Balliol View beyond. This third photograph is turning to look in a sort of southerly direction, again across the vacant plot adjacent to the application site, and this time towards 21 Balliol View. And this final photograph is taken from the rear of the application site, looking back towards the development road and the rear of the properties in Maxwell Park.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay, for that. Members, any clarification or shot on the photographs? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Lindsay, have we got, can you identify like a location plan? Can we see exactly where it is? Do we have that? I know I've got your fair at 365, I see it, but maybe it's because I'm colourblind, but I just can't see exactly where it is in relation to the rest of the site.
Sorry, on page 365 at the top left-hand corner of the actual site, Ian. I don't know if you've got that with you.
Chair, I'll look for that. I just wondered if we could see it on the screen, if it could be highlighted with a cursor or whatever it may be.
I can share that with you if you like.
Yeah, please, Lindsay.
Okay, can you see my cursor on the screen?
Yeah.
So the cursor is over the application site. It's up there in the top left of the slide.
You got that, Ian?
Thanks, yeah. As soon as it came up, I seen it. I don't know. Maybe because I'm colourblind, I do find it struggle sometimes with this stuff. Okay. But no, it's clear as crystal now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Just a wee bit of clarification, if I can. If you go to page 315 of the papers, there's a colour, and it's the application sites there. Now, my reading of this is that on the one side you've got a house with a number, on the other side a house with a number. So that the two sites there, or that one site, was that one site that had one street number in the past? So if that's the case, it wouldn't be a new development, it would be someone else going on where there already had been a development.
David, do you want to come in on that?
Maybe it would be simpler if I just left the meeting, because it was really Lindsay was going to be covering the next two items rather than myself.
Okay, Lindsay, if you want to come in on that?
Okay, I'm not quite sure what you're meaning by that. On page 315 of the papers, we have in purple and outlined in the red is the application site. We've got 25 Balliol View directly to its northwest. The undeveloped plot to the southwest with 21 Balliol View beyond that. We have number 3 Balliol View, which is the recent development across the road, and then the other area of land to the north currently remains undeveloped.
So in the original application for this, Lindsay, I would take it that this was done as a sort of multifaceted, multi-building application, and these particular buildings were not on that.
Yes, that's correct. The original planning permission for the development as a whole dates back a couple of decades. So they are being developed on an incremental basis, on a plot by plot basis.
Okay, thank you. Andy, are you happy with that?
That's exactly, I think, exactly my point, Archie, and I'm wondering if we get some advice on this, because the GPO don't put a street number against if there's no house there. That's my understanding. I might be wrong. So I suppose the question I'm asking here is, if either side of the application site, I think what it looks like to me is one very big site has been cut into two. But is there, I think what I'm trying to get at the bottom of here, is there already planning permission for a site on the bigger site, on the bigger part, rather than the bits in red? And if that's the case, yeah, where do we stand?
I think the understanding, Andy, is that we deal with the applications that are in front of us, the LRB, and we're going to look at this as you know, an individual case. I wouldn't like to get involved in any other applications if this is the LRB looking at this particular item. Laura, can you give advice on this?
I'm not sure there's actually a legal point for me to advise on. My understanding of the planning history, and Lindsay would be better placed to advise you on this, is that there was outline planning permission for a larger area, and so there have been individual plots developed, and so I think it would be better to speak to Lindsay about this actual point rather than legal.
Okay, thanks for that. Lindsay, have you got an answer to that?
Okay, looking at the report of handling, all there is in relation to this particular site is the previous application, which was withdrawn, and earlier to that was the original planning permission in principle for the layout of the development and the access roads. There's no either extant or lapsed permission for a dwelling on this particular site.
Okay, thanks. Jim, you want to come in?
Just to say, Chair, what we are doing as an LRB is reviewing a decision made by a case officer. So it's all in about what's happened before. The case officer has accepted the circumstances as they are and made a determination on that. And our duty is to review the case officer's decision, discover whether or no there's other factors at play here, because that will come to light in the fullness of time. So I think we should just go on and deal with the application or the appeal as said before us, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. As I said before, we do these individually and they come forward and it's on the decision of the planning officer. So I'm going to go to the index of contents for any clarification now. So the first one is the notice of review and related documents, pages 305 to 18. Any points of view or clarification? Okay. Okay. The observation of the appointed officer and the applicant agency notice of review, pages 335 to 338. Comments of the application agent, observation of the appointed officer, pages 339 to 354. Planning application form submitted on the 4th of March 2021, associated plans and supported information, pages 355 to 384. Decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 26th of July 2021, pages 385 to 392. And the relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, pages 395 to 402. And we've seen the photographs, which there has been some clarification given on that. Members, are we happy to go to discussing the application in front of us? And is there any views on this? Ian?
Thanks, yeah. So I'm not sitting in an office space today, so apologies. Maybe we'll go back a couple of steps if that's okay. But just as general question, Chair, I'm looking at, let me see, it's page 341. I know we're past that point as far as points of clarity, but there's one paragraph in it, so you can see the 4 bullet points contained there, and I'm looking specifically at bullet point 3. I wonder if we could ask Lindsay in regards to that. That's a question that's been raised by the applicant at the time. I'm just interested in that particular point, because we were looking at potentially an oversized building on top of this plot here, Chair.
Okay, Lindsay, so that's to clarify the policy where a footprint of float ratio of 30% is specified.
There is no policy that is as prescriptive as that within the local development plan. Each application is taken on a case-by-case basis. It will depend on the particular circumstances of the case as to what's acceptable.
Ian, you happy with that?
No, thank you, Chair. I genuinely thought there was it somewhere, but I did think, my understanding as Lindsay has outlined, so there's nothing prescriptive, but it's in general terms. You hear these different comments, and I did actually think 30% was there somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Members, are we happy to go to? Let's go through the thing. Are we happy we can make a decision on this today? Have we got enough information to make the decision today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have, Chairman. Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I don't think we need a site visit. I'm not proposing a site visit. You happy with that? So therefore, I would propose that we go with the recommendation within the papers, and that's to refuse on the grounds stated. Do you have a seconder? Ian?
Not your question, Chair. Just maybe a wee bit further debate. So, thanks for the clarity earlier. So, come back to pages 343, as we've spoken about earlier. So, you've got your site location plan, which is 1 in 500. I'm not exactly sure. Kind of read for that is or no, but it's quite obvious. So, it's outlined in purple. And just look at in that general setting, there's a real mix and match of house sizes, types, so on and so forth. And then I went to page 365 when you see it there again. So you look across the whole site, the general, which is a pretty large built out area. Again, looking in context of the whole site, actually, for me, Chair, it doesn't look out of place. What's been put in front of us. There's comments made that there's been quite a degree of work been put into this to try and get this siting and design right, and so I'm not exactly sure what the percentage is in as far as footprint to size of site, but I haven't got any issues, Chair, in regards to this house type that's been put in front of us being approved. It is only, I'm looking at page 223, 26, there's only one reason, recommendation I should say, for the refusal, and that is about its size and scale in real terms. So I'm okay with it, Chair. I'd be okay to approve this. I just put my cards on the table now. I don't think it's as straightforward, and I'm thinking back to what was said there in our training. It is de novo. We're looking at this afresh and taking into consideration the other sizes of house types, the size of sites. It's not really that much out of character. It's not any scale that I would think, no, I want to refuse and see something significantly different come back. For me, there would be very minor adjustments to make it identical to the other houses and size of sites that have been built out in this area. So I'm quite happy to approve this one today, Chair.
I think what happened in the awareness training that was done last week is that if you were willing to do that, you would need to put some conditions in place. If you ever think about that first, Ian, and I'll get Jim to come in then, Ronnie.
Thank you, Chair. I will.
Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Just a second, your proposal.
Thank you. Ronnie? Councillor Tate?
Can you hear me now, Chair?
I can hear you now, Ronnie.
Yeah, just going back to page 341 in this bullet point number 2, actually. I wonder if Lindsay could maybe give us some clarification on that, actually. I'll read it out if you want. There are many instances of other plots within the development where the boundary distance are less than the 1.8/1.9 proposed, but were not considered to have crossed the threshold of accessibility. Could we have some clarity in that? Because there seems to be other houses on this site that haven't, the threshold hasn't been accepted either. Really, it shouldn't have been accepted. So if we could have some clarity from Lindsay, I'd be grateful in that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, you want to give some clarity to Councillor Tate?
Certainly. As I said before, the policies are not prescriptive because every case is assessed on its own merits. So we're not only looking at the distance from the boundaries, but also the overall scale and massing of the dwelling, its overall footprint. Normally with a suburban development where you're approaching the edge of the settlement, you'd be looking for a less dense development as it approaches the settlement edge. But each application is taken on its own merits. The other plots in the vicinity appear to have a maximum sort of density of around 30%, and it needs to be determined. It's a judgment call as to whether or not the point of acceptability has been exceeded.
Can I come back in, Archie?
Yeah, of course you can.
No, just from a layman's point of view, actually, when you're looking at some of these photographs, on page 315, and there's others as well, actually. You can't differentiate between what this new development is and the existing development. If you just look at them, there's no an extra density on this new application as opposed to the ones that's already there. That's coming again from a layman's point of view. They're looking at this and they're saying, "Hold on a minute, there's no difference between the existing stuff as the new application."
Okay. Thanks, Ronnie. Andy.
I'm looking through this, and I don't know if I've missed the boat asking the question here, but I'm assuming this went to delegate power to the officers because there was no objections from the properties around. Can you just clarify that for me, Lindsay?
Lindsay, you want to do
it? Yes, it was a delegated decision. None of the triggers requiring a committee decision were met. So yes, it was a delegated decision on that basis.
So just so I'm absolutely clear, Archie, there were no objections for the people either side or across the road.
Lindsay, you want to come on?
I'm just checking the delegated report just to be certain. Yes, as set out in page 323 of the papers, there were no representations either in support or objection to the application.
You happy with that, Andy?
Yes, Archie, thanks very much. That makes it much clearer in my mind what we need to do here, but we'll obviously come to that in a minute or two.
Okay, thanks. So I've put a motion forward to go with the recommendations of the report when Jim has seconded it. Ian, you've got, you said you would like to change that and you were going to come back with some conditions.
Thanks, yes, I did have a chance to review and maybe come back to Lindsay in regards to the conditions, because usually it's a pro forma. It goes back to, and I just, again, and Ronnie's actually picked up on it, but used different language. It's about 326, and it's an overdevelopment is what you're talking about in particular. And it's only the one recommendation for refusal, and what it's saying, okay, there's no issues whatsoever about the principal development, should it be built on, so on and so forth. They're saying the footprint in this house is a bit large for the size and scale of the plot size. It's certainly my understanding, and I'm looking at it going back to look at it as such a mix and match across this site. I do believe it's on balance, it's on the verge of being okay. Even the house next to it is a similar size, scale and footprint. In fact, if not even bigger, looking at it. But anyways, that's by the by. I differ, my view is different. Taking into consideration the wider aspects of the site and considering things in its fullest across the whole site. And maybe it's, just so I'm clear, going back to that de novo and the situation for the LRB's point of view, I believe it does. It's on balance, but I do believe it does comply with the planning policies referred to policy OP2 in particular, and the supplemental guidance in regards to the design, I believe it does actually comply with that. Conditions, I'll come back to Lindsay on Chair if that's okay, just as far as, but I would move we do approve this application today, review I should say.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that you have to have those conditions in place before you actually say that you're going to change the decision of the officer and the report. So obviously, you know, getting time to do that, that's fine. Do you wish a small recess until you get that sorted out?
Sure, I mean, happy to do that, or happy to do this in public as well, because I mean, there's a lot of detail in the application, so it's not about the site and design, the finishes, there's an awful lot of detail there. There was certain aspects that certainly as an independent case officer, planning officer should say things, okay, this has maybe been missed, maybe need something considered wider with this, but the road construction's in, the wider actual plan permission, I think in the initial would cover the road conditions, kind of environmental issues are all being covered with the wider. This is just about siting and design. So, and I think because of the level of detail we've got, it's probably covered. So it might be that it's approved unconditionally, Chair. But I would rather take advice from an independent planning advisor, Chair.
Lindsay, you want to give some advice to Councillor Carruthers?
Yes, in relation to potential conditions, I'd refer you to the roads officer's comments. They've recommended a couple of conditions in relation to access and parking arrangement, but other than that, I think they're the only two conditions that would be necessary.
Ian, are you happy with that?
Well, I'm happy. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay. Claire, we've got a motion and an amendment, I think. Sorry, is there anybody willing to second Ian's motion? Amendment, sorry.
I'll second that. Chair.
Okay, Lonnie, thank you. Claire, can we go to the...
Okay, Chair, we have a motion proposed by yourself, seconded by Councillor Dempster, to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application for the same reasons as are in the papers. Amendment proposed by Councillor Carruthers, seconded by Councillor Tate, to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application as in that it complies with OP2 policy of the LDP2 in that the size and scale are not out of character with the partner development in the surrounding area, and this would be subject to the two roads conditions that are in the papers for approved car parking to be provided and the dwelling house composite requirements. So going to the vote then, Chair.
Motion.
Councillor Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Tate.
Amendment.
So the amendment carried 3 votes to 2. That's the decision of the appointed officer, reverse planning permission, approved, subject to the 2 roads conditions.
Okay, thanks very much, Claire. We'll now move on to item number 7, which is land adjacent to Hillowton House, Castle Douglas, refusal plan permission for the erection dwelling house, respective 210043 FUL. Claire.
Okay, thank you. You've got your notice of review and related documents. Again, I'll confirm that the LRB have received all the sensitive information that's been redacted in the notice of review. We've got the report on handling, the observation of the appointed officer, planning application, decision letter, relevant extracts from the LDP2, photos of application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are that the proposed development fails to meet any of the criteria in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, LDP 2 Policy H3, which only permits the erection of new houses in the countryside in particular circumstances, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. As such, the proposal would be contrary to the provisions of the development plan as set out in LDP 2 Policy H3 and to associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside. The proposed development fails to achieve high quality design in terms of its contribution to the existing built environment, contributing to a sense of place and local distinctiveness. As such, it would be contrary to the provisions of the development plan as set out in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, LDP2, Policy OP2, and to associated supplementary guidance on design quality and placemaking. The question method of determination, the applicant has asked that the review be dealt with on the assessment of the review documents by means of an inspection of the land which is subject to review. The grounds stated in notice of review are in summary. There are a number of existing dwelling houses located within the former grounds of Hillowtown House which form a small building group. This proposal adds to that group. The applicant has access and owns additional ground, including the access drive from the public road which services access to all properties within Hillowtown. There is a further potential development site in the north known as the Orangery, the current application site. The LDP2 certainly appears to encourage more houses in small groups, which was its purpose. It is agreed that the applicant has erected a dwelling house without the necessary planning permission. It is, however, observed that the building is modest in size and height, is siting on a sloping site within the landscape, is exceptionally well screened both from the A75 trunk road and any adjoining houses. It is clear that from LDP2 that this modest single-storey, low-profile dwelling, equally modest accommodation, offers little or no visual detriment to the area and is in accordance with LDP2 in that it replaces a former substantial orangery and seed house, both of which have fallen into decay and potential dereliction. It is located within a dense woodland and shrub area within the applicant's land, all forming a small building group within the vicinity of Hillowtown House. If the local review body upholds the refusal for the above application, would they consider a continuance? The review could arrange a site visit and Mr and Mrs Constantine could apply for a temporary habitation certificate for a number of months, e.g. 12 months. The family could then apply for outline permission for a single-storey house in their grounds and dwelling house, which would revert to a garden room or studio. This would also give the family time to find other accommodation. You have all the relevant development plan policies. So the main issues for the LRB to consider are: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan policy in principle in this location? Would the proposal meet any of the tests set in LDP2 policy H3 housing in the countryside and the associated LDP2 supplementary guidance? Does the proposal form part of the hitherto unidentified small building group under LDP2 policy H3, which is defined as 3 or more separate habitable or occupied houses which are well related to each other and which create a sense of place? Turning to LB2 policy OP2, would the proposal meet these requirements and related LDP2 supplementary guidance on design quality and place making? In particular, is the design considered to be of high enough quality in this location in terms of its contribution to the existing built environment? Does the building contribute to a sense of place and local distinctiveness in this particular location? If it is considered that the proposal fails to accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify its departure from the terms of LDP2? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? And members are minded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? If members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required. So again, I've outlined the documents within your papers, and it falls to the LRB to consider whether you have sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed again that there will be no representations heard from any party today. You have the same options and procedures as outlined previously. If the LRB resolves it has sufficient information and no further procedure is required, then the LRB has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms and how the local authority has decided the case reviewed. Again, you have an independent planning advisor present for this case. They have not had any involvement in the case. We're not the case officer or the appointed officer, here to provide purely independent advice as needed on matters of planning, policy, law or process to the local review body. You also have a solicitor present who's here to act independently if the LRB require on specific advice on matters of law. So if members are clear, again ask the Chair to lead you through the papers for this item.
Thanks very much, Claire. Again, I intend to take members through we've done the previous three. We'll go for the photographs first, and then we'll go for any points of clarification on this. I take it this is the other one with the potential for exempt, and if members are happy to go what we did with the first one, then we'll do that as well. If we need to have a recess or whatever and go into private session, we'll do that as well. Are members happy to go along with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Lindsay, I take you'll be taking us through the photographs in this one?
That's correct. I'll just share my screen with you. Okay, can everybody see that?
I see your name at the moment, but not anything else. That's it, yep.
Okay, these are the photographs which are included in pages 521 to 524 of your papers, and the location plan on page 447 is useful in providing a bit of context to these photographs. So this first photograph is taken on the access track leading to the application site. It's a photograph taken just to the south of Hillerton House. As you skirt round the curtilage, you can see the existing garage for Hillerton on the right-hand side, and the application site is at the end of this access track. This second photograph is taken slightly further along this access track. Again, you can see the garage to Hillerton House on the right-hand side. Again, this is the access track which led to the orangery, and this is looking in a northwesterly direction. Moving slightly further along the access track, this is looking back in an east-southeasterly direction, showing the orangery on the left-hand side, just in behind the wall and the bushes. Moving into the application site, this is a view of the northern elevation of the orangery, with the large existing shed to the right-hand side. And this is the southern elevation of the orangery, which is behind the brick wall and the bushes. And this is a view of the south elevation of the orangery, showing the open veranda. And this again is a view of the south elevation of the orangery, showing the veranda. And that completes the photographs.
Thanks, Lindsay. Members, any questions on the photographs? Ian?
Thanks, yeah. Silly question, maybe, Lindsay, but it looks like the construction looks like that's a solid built wall, not cavity. Just clarity in that, please.
Lindsay? Lindsay?
talking about the dwelling itself, Chair. Sorry, these were absolute.
Yeah.
And if we can't get an answer, it's fine. I'll come back to it. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Yep, if you leave it with me for a moment, I'll just check the drawings for the application.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Lindsay's images seem to have gone from an old derelict building to a new build, which is what we're considering today. But there are a lot of other images in the papers, presumably provided by the applicant or the applicant's agent. Are they available at all?
Lindsay?
Those photographs are just available within the papers, I'm afraid. I don't have them separately.
All right with that, Jim?
Yes, Chair, aye.
Okay. I don't know if you've got an answer yet, Lindsay, for Ian.
Okay, I can cover it later on quite easily. It's just a particular
I'm
point.
still working on that one.
Okay, well, I'll go through the rest and look for clarification on this as well. So we have the notice of review related documents, pages 411 to 422. Are there any points of clarification in this? We've got the report and handed related correspondence, pages 425 to 430. And in the supplement pack issued, pages 525 to 533. Any points of clarification? And I've got plan application form submitted on the 11th of January 2021, associated plans and supporting information, pages 437 to 500. And then we have a decision letter from the Dumfries Galloway Council dated 16th of June 2021, pages 501 to 508. The relevant extracts from the Dumfries Galloway Council dated 16th of June 2021, pages 501 to 5. I've had that once. Pages 509 to 518, sorry. Any points of clarification on that? And then we've had the photographs and we're just waiting on that question to be answered for Ian.
To pick up on that later as well, Chair. I mean, there's lots of photographs contained in the just short of page 500, which answers a number of it. But I mean, it just I'll get myself through them, Chair, until such time. But it's something certainly come back to later, Chair. It's not so. It's
Okay,
not
thanks. Thanks, members. Okay, members. Do you think we have sufficient information in front of us today to make a decision?
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks, Ryan.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, then, members, it's over to you how you want to take this forward. So, is there anybody willing to say? And I know you've looked for a couple of points of clarification or a point of clarification on what the building material is, but.
Chair, so I am. It looks like a mixed bag to me. It looks like it's solid wall construction and cavity wall. But I wonder at some point, you touched on it earlier, Chair. This is probably one where I would like an adjournment if we spoke about in a private conversation. If at some point, thank you.
Okay. Claire, can we arrange a private conversation on this?
Yeah, yes, would that be to discuss the sensitive information? We can certainly arrange for the live stream to be paused.
Go on. Okay. I think if we can do that now, then we can pause the live streaming and then go into private session. Is that okay? Thank you. Andy? Andy, with your hand up.
Sorry, Archie. I'm having looked at this. I'm minded to propose that we actually agree with the designated officer and refuse this.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other members minded otherwise? Okay, thank you very much for that, Andy. So, Claire, can you make the decision of the LRB on this particular application?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the LRB are agreeing to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application for the reasons stated in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I don't have any other business which is deemed urgent for me to decide. So thank you very much for your input today and your professionalism in taking all of these applications forward. And I shall close the meeting as from now. Thank you very much.